All right, welcome, everybody. A bit of a special episode today, as a lot of y'all know, it is Pride Month, and although we celebrate the LGBTQ around here all the time, it's
Oh yeah.
definitely an exciting time, and I wanted to do, at least a couple special streams this month and was hoping I could do something where I could actually have some of our trans friends join us. And the other day, I happened to be on my last stream. If you missed the stream, I guess from yesterday, I think with about Pine Creek, I mentioned some fake doctors, and Ember reached out, and Steph was available. So I feel like the stars were just aligned because um, thought this was an important thing to discuss. So I want to send a huge shout out to Ember and to Stephanie Helms for joining me. There are links to both of their channels down in the description box. So if you're not already subscribed, you're missing out, and make sure you do. And they also both happen to be hosting the new channel, the Transpositions, along with Bree. And so make sure you subscribe to that, and there's a link in the description as well. Actually, Bree, feel free to hop on if you want to join us. That'd be more than appropriate. Be happy to have the whole Transpositions crew here. Um, so I dropped the link for that. Also, there is a link for Bree's channel as well down in the description. So make sure you show some love and support. All right. So if y'all will indulge me, the first thing I wanted to do is review a couple of statements. The first two were provided for me by Stephanie Helms. They come from the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association. Um, and then there's a couple of statements from the American Association of Pediatrics, or the American Academy of Pediatrics, rather. And since we're going to be talking about pediatrics and talking about sort of a spoof on the American Academy of Pediatrics, I thought it would be appropriate to get their statements. And basically, I kind of want to start off the top with what the real medical experts say, right? Because you get yourself in the situation sometimes when you're debunking, and the real expertise gets lost in the sauce. So I thought we'd kind of get that out of the way, put the Surgeon General's label right up front.
That's
uh,
right. This content may cause brain rot.
well, YouTube does this with YouTube will do this if you have a stream about controversial content, right? They'll put like a box at the bottom of the stream and clarify that, there might be some pseudoscience or misinformation in the stream. And so I actually think it's important that we can do that as content creators. Hang on, let me change my background real quick, because this one there's a lot of motion going on. I know some
We're
people.
going for a trip.
Yeah, some people get a little motion sick. All right. Um, so let me go ahead and do that. All right. So this first one is from the American Psychological Association, and it's just the APA policy statement on affirming evidence-based inclusive care for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals, addressing misinformation, and the role of psychological practice in science. All right. Consistent with the American Psychological Association's mission to promote the advancement, communication, and application of psychological science and knowledge to benefit society and improve lives, this policy statement affirms APA's support for unobstructed access to healthcare and evidence-based clinical care for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary children, adolescents, and adults, and for increased public accessibility to timely and accurate information founded in clinical and psychological science. Evidence-based clinical care, including gender-affirming care, should be non-coercive, adaptive to, and centered on the needs of the individual receiving care, and rooted in psychological and clinical science, including recognition of gender diversity as a part of normal human diversity, as well as recognition of limits in the current state of scientific knowledge. Furthermore, this policy statement addresses the spread of misleading and unfounded narratives that mischaracterize gender dysphoria and affirming care, likely resulting in further stigmatization, marginalization, and lack of access to psychological and medical supports for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals. Misinformation further creates distress and confusion for families and loved ones of transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals as they make decisions about their healthcare. The primary goal is to encourage psychologists to unite in their support for access to psychological and all appropriate healthcare services and treatment for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals. Policy statement. Whereas gender diversity is present throughout the lifespan and has been present throughout history, and whereas gender-based bias and mistreatment, e.g., discrimination, violence, non-affirmation, or rejection in response to gender diversity, pose significant harm, including risk of suicide to the well-being of children, adolescents, adults, and families. And whereas transgender, gender diverse, and non binary individuals experiencing systematic discrimination and mistreatment targeting their gender identity or expression may also face racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, religious, and other forms of discrimination, translated into greater discrimination and psychological distress than their counterparts. Whereas gender-related distress is a complex and nuanced psychological experience informed by a rapidly evolving basis in new scientific findings and advances, which often require specialized understanding and expertise. Whereas psychologists often play a vital role in assisting individuals experiencing gender dysphoria and their parents, caregivers, and families, offering valuable insights into their mental health and well-being. Whereas psychologists can play an important and essential role in facilitating the support for client-led exploration of gender identity, assisting individuals in navigating their unique experiences. Whereas affirming mental health services provided by psychologists can positively contribute to the holistic care of individuals participating in gender affirming healthcare or experiencing gender dysphoria, gender incongruence, and or distress associated with discrimination and mistreatment. Whereas legislative efforts to restrict access to care have involved the dissemination of misleading and unfounded narratives, e.g., mischaracterizing gender dysphoria as a manifestation of traumatic stress or neurodivergence, and equating affirming care for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary youth with child abuse, creating a distorted perception of the psychological and medical support necessary for these youth, and creating a hostile environment that adversely affects their mental health and well-being. Whereas such misinformation is widely disseminated through formal and informal networks, yet credible scientific evidence has not been widely disseminated and is not readily accessible to the public, having the potential to further stigmatize and marginalize all transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals, hindering their access to indicated and necessary health care, worsening existing geographic disparities in healthcare access, and fostering an environment that may lead to discrimination. Whereas state bans on gender affirming care and the imposition of legal penalties on providers engaging in evidence based care disregard the comprehensive body of psychological and medical research supporting the positive impact of gender affirming treatments, which include as a standard of care, non-coercive, developmentally appropriate support for gender exploration and decision-making in alleviating psychological distress and improving overall well-being for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals across the lifespan. Whereas state bans on gender-affirming care disrupt not only the role of providers in offering evidence-based care, but also obstruct patient and parental rights in shared decision-making, whereas the imposition of such bans poses a direct threat to the mental health and emotional well-being of transgender and gender-diverse non-binary youth, exacerbating the already high rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide attempts amongst this vulnerable population, whereas obstructing access to the psychological and medical interventions, including gender-affirming care, heightens the risk of negative mental health outcomes among children, adolescents, and adults. Therefore, be it resolved that the American Psychological Association steadfastly supports evidence-based clinical care for all children, adolescents, and adults, inclusive of gender and identity expression. And therefore, be it resolved that the APA upholds the rights of all individuals to unbiased health insurance coverage, rejecting discrimination based on gender identity, and advocating for the inclusion of gender-affirming care, including psychological care. And therefore, it be resolved that the APA underscores the necessity for access to comprehensive gender-affirming healthcare for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary children, adolescents, and adults. Therefore, be it resolved, the APA underscores the importance of an accurate understanding of evidence-based care, highlighting the continuous need for research and expansion of the scientific foundation to further ensure full access to competent and reliable healthcare as essential to promoting inclusivity, protecting the rights of transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals, and ensuring that they receive the necessary support and full healthcare attention, inclusive of psychological and medical care, in a compassionate and affirming manner. Therefore, be it resolved, the APA supports efforts to address and rectify the dissemination of false information to ensure the well-being and dignity of transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals. And therefore, be it resolved, the APA opposes state bans on gender-affirming care, which are contrary to the principles of evidence-based healthcare, human rights, and social justice, and which should be reconsidered in favor of policies that prioritize the well-being and autonomy of transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary individuals. Therefore, be it resolved that insurance plans should extend coverage for healthcare services tailored to the developmental needs of children, adolescents, and adults identifying as transgender, gender diverse, or non-binary, encompassing both psychological and medical gender-affirming care. Be it resolved that equitable health insurance access is necessary to facilitate essential gender-affirming care, including access to mental health supports. Hang on a sec. Therefore, be it resolved that the APA opposes efforts to obstruct access to evidence-based interventions for children, adolescents, and adults, advocating for inclusive healthcare coverage without gender-based discrimination. And therefore, be it resolved that the APA emphasizes the importance of psychological and medical care from an intersectional perspective, which takes into consideration the many facets of an individual's experience and provide services that are anti-discriminatory in all areas, including opposing racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, religious, and gender-based discrimination. And therefore, be it resolved, the APA urges support for policies facilitating access to comprehensive gender-affirming healthcare for children, adolescents, and adults, recognizing the positive impact on mental health outcomes. All right, I promised myself I keep it to 2 pages for each of these things. So just Ember and Steph, give us your initial responses to the APA's statement here.
It's great that they come right out and say, these are the facts. These are what we stand for and believe should be implemented into policy. They're not beating around the bush. They're not directly engaging with the nonsense that we'll be looking at a little bit later. They're just saying, here's reality, and the people spreading misinformation are doing actual harm.
Yeah, and it's a major medical organization. It's the American Psychological Association, and they're taking a stand. And we need to see more of this from these major medical organizations. I mean, we're getting pseudoscience from little YouTube creators to uh, 700 people who decide that someday they're going to put on a lab coat and go on their YouTube channel or gussy up a website to pump out just the worst crap that influences state departments of health in Florida, National Health Service in England, that influence this kind of stuff. And we need these major medical associations to do exactly what the American Psychological Association did in this piece, which is to say, this is a claim, this is a claim, this is a claim, this is a claim. They're all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And we oppose them, every single one of them. They're all bullshit. And come talk to us. Come talk to the people with 70,000 members who are physicians, board certified physicians and psychologists. Come talk to us. Don't talk to Pine Nuts. Some guy named Pine Nuts. I think I've heard of him somewhere. I mean, I chew them up and spit them out. But God damn it, quit it, people. Pay attention to what would you go to a guy named Pine Nuts to have your arms set? Come on now. Let's get real. Come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here's another one, Steph. This one is from the American Psychiatric Association. Hang on, let me make it a little bit easier for those that are following along or don't trust my reading. Position statement on treatment of transgender and gender diverse youth. Issue: transgender and gender nonconforming youth often experience an intensification of emotional distress when the physical changes of puberty occur in opposition to the adolescent's gender identity and sense of self. The onset of menses, for example, is unwanted and psychologically devastating for an adolescent trans man assigned female at birth. Worsening dysphoria may manifest as depression, anxiety, poor relationships with family and peers, self-harm, and suicide. Racism, misogyny, economic disadvantage, and neurodiversity can compound the risk of negative outcomes. Due to the dynamic nature of puberty development, lack of gender-affirming interventions, i.e. social, psychological, and medical, is not a neutral position. Youth often experience worsening dysphoria and negative impact on mental health as the incongruent and unwanted puberty progresses. Trans-affirming treatments, such as the use of puberty suppression, is associated with the relief of emotional distress and notable gains in psychosocial, and emotional development in trans and gender diverse youth. Gender-affirming treatment of trans and gender diverse youth who experience gender dysphoria due to physical changes of puberty may include suppression of puberty development with GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone agonist, commonly referred to as puberty blockers. Use of GnRH agonist, despite potential side effects, e.g. hot flashes, depression, can allow the adolescent a period of time, often several years, in which to further explore their gender identity and benefit from additional cognitive and emotional development. During this time, the youth and family can receive mental health and social support services if needed to navigate the gender affirmation process, including the consideration of whether gender-affirming hormone therapy is an appropriate next step. If during this discernment period, further adolescent development leads to increased comfort with the birth assigned gender, the GnRH agonist can be discontinued and puberty allowed to resume. If the developmental trajectory affirms the trans identity, treatment with estrogen or testosterone can be instituted to facilitate development of affirmed secondary sex characteristics, if desired. Gender-affirming surgeries may follow in later adolescence or young adulthood. However, affirmation of gender identity is a highly individualized process for gender diverse youth and their families. Decisions to which gender-affirming medical, surgical, social, and or legal procedures to pursue are best managed via an informed consent approach. Therefore, the American Psychiatric Association, 1, supports access to affirming and supportive treatment for trans and gender diverse youth and their families, including appropriate mental health services, and when indicated, puberty suppression and medical transition support. 2, opposes all legislative and other governmental attempts to limit access to these services for trans and gender diverse youth, or to sanction or criminalize the actions of physicians and other clinicians who provide them. All right, and I'll get you back to our panel. Ember, what do you think?
It's pretty comprehensive. I no notes.
No, it's really good. Go ahead, Steph.
Same old thing. You know, you want to go to Pine Nuts, or you want to talk to the American Psychiatric Association. You want to talk to the pediatric medicine organization that has 70,000 members, or you want to talk to the 700 people in medical coats that they rented for the day from Jim Bob's down the street. Come on, people, get real. Talk to the doctors. That's what trans people do. We don't go out onto the goddamn street and ask some goon what to do about for our transition. We go to our physicians. We go to our psychiatric social workers. We go to our psychiatrists. We go to where the real deal is. We go to, I'm going to put a link to the Transpositions Newsroom Discord.
Sure. Yeah,
where we have a reading room with I believe now we're over 40 peer-reviewed pieces of research spanning over 30 years on this subject. Don't get your news from Fox. Don't get your medical advice from Pine Nuts.
Yeah.
Get your medical advice. Do your research. Do your research for yourself. Would you go to the people that advise you to eat horse dewormer? Shove a flashlight up your ass. Drink bleach when you're suffering with a virus. Please, people.
It is worth noting that some people don't realize that the reason all this is being discussed is because a fake medical organization posing as a real medical organization has been spreading misinformation. And while most people may realize, hey, I've never heard of this organization before, maybe I should Google them and see what they're all about. When the news organizations start picking up their misinformation and reporting, this group said a thing, and not bothering to give the viewer any background, people might be misled.
Yes. Yeah, and that's definitely something.
They are literally in positions of power. They are literally in positions of power. This is where the Cass report came from. Right. These are the same people. And if you look at, you look across particularly the gender critical movement, the most prominent people, they're always the same people.
That's a really good point. That it's the same. It's like they're like a boy band. They're on tour and they go to every state and every major city, and it's the same exact set, the same exact show, the same exact outfits. It's the same in Iowa as it is in Illinois, as it is in Maine, as it is in Florida. All right. So before we move on, one thing I do want to, and just for me, lack of gender affirming interventions is not a neutral decision.
Right.
That I wish that were the headline that we could get the damn major news stories to carry, because that's what people need to realize. Okay, now that you're thinking about this issue, think about the real impact. Think about the the real kids that you're gonna be hurting if we don't do this. But yeah, I love the fact that they were unambiguous about that.
Yeah.
Reading more like this, please.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So the last one here is sort of dealing with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I wanted to read their sort of updated statement and then just a bit of an opinion column. And one thing I want people to realize too is the recency of this. This comes in from August 4th of 2023, so less than a year ago. And this is the American Academy of Pediatrics. The AAP reaffirms gender affirming care policy, authorizes systematic review of evidence to guide update. The AAP Board of Directors voted to reaffirm the 2018 AAP policy statement on gender affirming care and authorize development of an expanded set of guidance for pediatricians based on a systematic review of the evidence. An updated policy statement plus companion clinical and technical reports will reflect data and research on gender affirming care since the original policy was released and offer updated guidance. The board recognized the value of additional detail with 5 more years of experience since the 2018 policy statement was issued. The decision to authorize a systematic review reflects the board's concerns about restrictions to access to healthcare with bans on gender affirming care in more than 20 states. AAP CEO and Executive Vice President Mark Delamonte, who's also a lawyer, is speaking today at the AAP Leadership Conference in Ithaca, Illinois. He emphasizes that policy authors and AAP leadership are confident the principles presented in the original policy, ensuring comprehensive care and support for transgender and gender diverse children and adolescents, remain in the best interest of children. As part of its mission, the AAP will continue to ensure young people get the reproductive and gender affirming care they need and are seen, heard, and valued as they are, Delmont said. The board reviews evidence and considers policy renewal on a regular schedule as authorizations expire. Based on the continuing review, the board reaffirmed the current guidance on transgender care until there's an updated version. To ensure the policy update process is transparent and inclusive, the AAP will invite members and other stakeholders to share input. The AAP and other major medical organizations, including the American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the World Health Organization, support giving transgender adolescents access to health care they need. The AAP opposes any laws or regulations that discriminate against transgender or gender diverse individuals or that interfere in the doctor-patient relationship. So again, just unambiguous support based on, and there's a couple things I think it's important for people to realize. Not that it's any of our business. That's number one thing we should realize. It's none of our fucking business. but to the extent that we're here, which means hopefully you're at least curious, these people are up on it, and they're not just making outdated recommendations. They're like, hey, it's been 5 years since we made our policy. Let's double check. Oh yeah, we got 5 more years of data. Yeah, we want to stay in the same position. It's also important to notice that they mention the consensus of a broad range of other professional medical organizations.
Yes, all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Literally all of them.
Yeah, and honestly, that was the thing. There's literally so many that we could have chosen. I wanted to make sure I included the one Stephanie sent me, and I also wanted to include a couple things related to youth and pediatrics in particular, because that's where so much of the panic is, and it really is. It is like a worthwhile thing to talk about, because it's important that we don't, just like we don't allow sports, we don't allow our trans athletes to get left behind. We can't allow trans youth to get left behind. And honestly, I feel like the progress in care is...
You got a trans athlete on that boat right there. Thumbs up. Taking second place at the World Championship in J24s in Miami 2019. So
That's
there you
fantastic.
go.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
So, Steph, just something both y'all could talk about is just what difference you think that could have made to have this, to discover your identity as a young person and to not have to go through the wrong puberty.
Well, it's I think I often say that transition isn't a roadmap. It's a chart, a nautical chart, or a topographical map. Everybody takes their own path. Everybody finds their own journey. Everybody does it in a different way. For me, and the reason I know that children today are are confronting these issues is because I confronted them in 1957. Before, people think that this is brand new. It's not.
Right.
I confronted these in 1957, literally telling my mom after completing a task when she told me good boy, I said no girl. I was 4 years old. 3.5 or 4 years old. And in 1957, the preferred treatment for that was shock therapy, and I'm not exaggerating. It was, you get hauled off to a shrink, you get hauled, and the words were, what are we gonna do with you? You're an impossible girl. I was the impossible girl. So what kind of a difference would it have made? I don't know. My life would have been very, very different, but I wouldn't have had to overcome this that I lived with almost since I had any kind of bodily awareness at all. And sense of myself at all, gender sense at all. I wouldn't have had that piece of my personality be a challenge. Throughout my childhood, throughout my adolescence, throughout my adult life, until I finally, the training was basically, you cannot be. No, girl, you cannot be. And that's a hell of a thing to live with for 40, 45 years.
Yeah, Ember, what do you think?
And so that's my position anyway.
Sorry, Steph, I can't see you, so I'm missing
Yeah.
visual cues.
Oh, I forgot I didn't have my camera on. But
No worries, no worries.
Invisible yet still visible. It's a neat trick. Yeah, my experience is very, very similar, although I'm only just getting started in my transition, really. But there's two aspects to this. If people like Steph and I could have transitioned when we were younger, if that option were available, then it would have saved us a considerable amount of misery and quite a lot of work after the fact. We wouldn't have had to go through the wrong puberty. We wouldn't have had to go through this extensive process of trying to deal with dysphoria and overcome things, because we would have been able to address it before the wrong changes sunk in.
Right.
But there's another aspect to this. While Steph and I only had to deal with additional suffering, how many people aren't around today because they couldn't,
Yeah. And that's kind of the cruelty that I'm thinking about, is there have been so many developments in terms of the treatment or the options that are available, and those options can make somebody's life so much better. But then this cruel movement withholds those options from you. So it's like, we have the medicine you need, we have what you want, but we're just going to put it behind glass and you can't get to it. And it just feels so torturous to do to people, especially children.
And the cruel movement is the thing that's new, right? The pushback is the thing that's new.
Yes.
The pushback is what's new. The papers that I referred to, that's over in the Transposition newsroom, all of those things, these are going back 30, 40 years. the phenomenon, the reason that these major medical organizations are so confident in making these assertions is because they have studied this since Harry S. Benjamin began his practice. The Harry S. Benjamin standards of care are now the WPATH standards of care. The Harry S. Benjamin standards of care were first published in the 60s. This is not new. What is new is essentially, listen, don't get me wrong. The sense of, gee, that's really weird. Transsexualism is very, very weird. That's what it was called back in the day. This is very, very weird. It's a weird thing, but we were more of a curiosity than a despised minority group of 0.2% of the world population.
Right.
That's new. And these new groups are being extremely effective in pretending to have studied this issue, but they themselves will tell you that this is a new problem that we've never seen before. And so you've got to wonder where that's coming from here. So that's what's new in my life anyway.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I hope people take that to heart. All right, so we got one more, and I think you'll really like what this person has to say. There's a couple things I definitely want to highlight, and I can't wait to get your thoughts. All right, so I did that wrong. All right, here we go. That should be that, and then restream should be this. There we go. Now that makes sense. Okay. All right, as I reflect on the recent, all right, so this is, I'm going to say this wrong. Moiser Zilegia, MD, PhD, pediatrician, y'all, okay? Why we stand up for transgender children and teens. As I reflect on the recent AAP leadership conference where pediatricians from across the country gathered in person for the first time in 3 years, I feel a tremendous sense of pride. Pediatricians are guided by our values. We believe in the inherent worth of all children, that each and every one deserves optimal health and the highest quality care. We stand on science and keep children front and center. While we know everyone cares about children, especially their own children, the AAP cares about all children, each and every one. This includes children and youth who are transgender. During the conference, pediatricians spoke up in support of a resolution on the need to expand education and training on gender-affirming care, and I was reminded of a patient encounter from when I was a freshly minted pediatrician. I was seeing a 16-year-old girl dressed in black from head to toe who came in for a well visit. She was in foster care and the landing place for so many LGBTQ plus youth rejected by their biological families, especially when I was first starting my career. She was pretty non-communicative. At the end of the visit, she said, "If you knew me, you would hate me." A couple of additional visits followed over the course of several weeks, and she eventually disclosed that she was a lesbian. It was an opportunity for me to reassure her that I admired her, supported her, and certainly did not hate her. Her mood changed instantly, and she opened up to me about the struggles she had endured and would face moving forward in a world that would not always be accepting. The emotional and psychological trauma of rejection, whether by family, friends, society, or lawmakers, can leave scars that never heal. When we fail to accept people for who they are, we pass painful judgments on them and create so much unnecessary emotional and psychological pain. I cannot tell you how many similar conversations I've had over the years with young LGBTQ plus patients. They are all, just like any teen, trying to find their way in life. Our duty to them as doctors is to support them on that journey, to help them become the best person they can be. This is the approach our gender-affirming care policy is grounded in. There is strong consensus among the most prominent medical organizations worldwide that evidence-based gender-affirming care for transgender children and adolescents is medically necessary and appropriate. It can even be life-saving. The decisions of whether and when to start gender-affirming treatment does not necessarily lead to hormone therapy or surgery, is personal and involves careful consideration by each patient and their family, which does not necessarily lead to hormone therapy. At this year's leadership conference, there was a second resolution on transgender youth offered by 5 pediatricians who disagree with the Academy's approach to gender affirming care. These pediatricians were unable to recruit a sponsor, which meant no one was willing to support their proposal. During our meeting, this resolution did not advance because it did not receive a second vote on the floor. Much like other formal democratic processes, the AAP Leadership Conference follows a set of standard parliamentary procedures to structure our discussions. The conference serves to connect AAP state chapters, our national committees, councils, and sections, and the AAP Board of Directors, which is the policymaking body of the Academy. Part of this meeting involves debate and voting on resolutions. When AAP members have the opportunity to provide input on the Academy's efforts to address important health issues, other topics at the leadership conference range from expanding children's health insurance to reducing child poverty. The resolution process is important because it keeps AAP leadership appraised of the issues and concerns of our members across the country. However, we don't need a formal resolution to look at the evidence around the care of transgender young people. Evaluating the evidence behind our recommendations, which the unsponsored resolution called for, is a routine part of the Academy's policy writing process. Critics of our gender-affirming care policy mischaracterize it as pushing medical or surgical treatments on youth. In fact, the policy calls for the opposite: a holistic, collaborative, compassionate approach to care with no end goal or agenda. The AAP section on LGBTQ health and wellness, as well as other groups within AAP's membership, are engaged in numerous conversations about transgender care, and we expect those discussions to continue. It is an important conversation and one the AAP is eager to lead. And here's my part. Here's what I love. Gender affirming care is a top issue of concern for pediatricians. And in fact, one of the top 10 resolutions receiving the most support at the meeting was the one on expanding education and training for pediatricians on gender affirming care. I was heartened to see this resolution pass with such broad support. Yet outside of our organization, there's a dangerous movement taking place, led by extremists, targeting youth who are receiving gender affirming care and vilifying the pediatricians providing their care. The result has been rampant disinformation about what this care is and real threats of violence against some of our members. In some states, efforts are underway to restrict access to gender affirming care and criminalize the pediatricians who provide it. This has already had a chilling effect on access to care in these communities, and other efforts across the country are focused on doing the same. The people who suffer the most from this discrimination are, of course, the children and teens just trying to live their lives as their true selves. Pediatricians will not stay silent as these lies are waged against our patients and our peers. I am proud to lead the American Academy of Pediatrics, proud to stand alongside pediatricians providing gender affirming care, and proud to support all children.
Hell yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It should go without saying that while the pediatricians, as she points out, they aren't trying to push any particular outcome. The opposition is. They're not saying our goal is well children or happy children or well-adjusted children who lead successful lives as adults. Their goal is to prevent transition no matter what that does to the children. And that's a problem. But on another level, the way she singles out the misinformation as dangerous, it's in a way she kind of understated it. And I'll credit her professionalism for that, because the rhetoric we're hearing today, it's on some level similar to the rhetoric that we heard about gay rights a few decades ago. But on another level, it's very similar to the rhetoric that we heard about abortion not that long ago either. And you may recall there was actual violence against doctors during that discourse.
And there has been in this latest thing, within the past, was it 2020 or 2022 or 2023, the Boston Children's Hospital bomb threat because of their gender affirming, because of their Center for Gender Care at Boston Children's. They had a bomb threat. Same thing in Texas. There are three, to my knowledge, that were in the news over the course of the past couple of years. That these people are serious. They're not. The people are serious. The threats are serious. The fact that in state after state after state, gender affirming care is not available. The fact that in England, not the entire UK, but in National Health Service England, you can't get GnRH agonists through the National Health Service. Plus, the English are starting from an abysmal place of therapy to begin with. There was an acquaintance of mine, a social media acquaintance of mine, posted today that she first was accepted to a gender clinic in England when she was 17. And that was 5 years ago. She doesn't have an appointment yet. So
Wow.
this is
Wow.
the state of care. This is what Florida is going after. This is what
Right.
where Florida is at. This is where Alabama is at. This
Now,
is where Arkansas is at. This is where state after state after state. This is where things are at. And when the medical professionals are saying this is bullshit, it's not just that they're saying it's bullshit, but these other groups are parading before the used car salesman in Arkansas, who happens to be sitting in the state legislature and getting told that no, the car salesman knows better than a medical doctor does.
Yeah,
That's where we're at.
and part of the thing about constantly playing defense is that we're not having conversations about the state of care. If people were waiting 5 years for cancer surgery, heart surgery, or the routine comparison, which is knee surgery, they'd be up in arms, right? But we're not even having that conversation about when a child in need of support, in need of care, is identified. How long is the process taking in terms of, like, we should be concerned that it's reasonable? But again, like, you're constantly playing defense, right? And that's a big part of this.
Yeah, and on so many levels, it's ridiculous. If this were being evaluated as a medical issue, there'd be no question, and it really wouldn't be affecting that many people. Lots and lots of people have knee surgery, and there's about a 20% regret rate for it. People who have had gender affirming procedures tend to have a very low regret rate, which is like in the 2%. And I'm not saying that let's forget about those people. In fact, let's
Right.
be very concerned. Let's be very supportive for those people. Again, their journey went to a certain place, and now they feel that perhaps they shouldn't have started in the first place, or something or other.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to need therapy. They're going to need help to get through this. And we should be compassionate
And
and
it's the
supportive
same
of those
services,
people.
right? They
But
need the same gender. It's the gender affirming care that's going to be the care they actually need, even as they go through
right,
that process.
right. So it's a but again, there's no medical procedure that doesn't have a level of regret. None.
Absolutely.
But in the case, you can make the case that the criteria for evaluation is good enough that the people who are identified as possibly being able to benefit from this kind of care, the filtering rate is tremendous. The people are doing a good job.
Yeah. It's
So
far
a
better
lot,
than
a
me
lot of the
choosing.
people, when you see some of the regret statistics that gender critical people like to cite, is, well, these people entered a gender program and X many dropped out. Well, that's because they weren't trans.
Right. Yeah.
That's
No, that's a
because the
great point.
process itself
Weeded them out. Yeah.
found a different path for those individuals. And this is the other thing that people miss. We're talking about human beings. We're talking about individuals, and we're talking about doctors evaluating those individuals with an eye toward the betterment of their health, with an eye toward good outcomes.
Yeah. So
And it's
speaking of good outcomes, the
working.
one thing I really wanted to touch on is the fact that they said gender affirming care is a top issue of concern for pediatricians. And I felt so good hearing that, because I think not enough people are aware of that. Um, and it's just nice to hear that in the moment that we're in, when they're in that conference and they're, gathered amongst their peers behind closed doors, that they get it, that they understand that this is one of the most vulnerable populations in our society right now, and that their care has to be a high priority for their profession, and that they have to be willing to put some skin in the game. And I found that really encouraging. All right, let's get to the main event of the evening. And it's going to be a lot of junk, but we've got the friendly atheist, Hemant Mehta, to guide us through it. So hopefully he'll help make it somewhat bearable. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking about the Sham medical organization, and they're feeding the trans panic. So yeah, let's go ahead and give them a shot.
You may have seen this on
Mode.
Facebook or X/Twitter, but late last week, a handful of doctors associated with the American College of Pediatricians, remember that, ACP, American College of Pediatricians, they issued a statement urging healthcare professionals to stop offering gender-affirming care to minors. And they even created a website for this. And I'm going to show you this website, Doctors Protecting Children Declaration. And it looks very fancy here. Like, given everything we know, basically saying, let's not help kids who are trans. I mean, they have pictures of doctors wearing the coats and doing
Stock
this.
photos.
And they have a declaration.
And they're doing this. And also, okay, okay. Quick little side tangent. Caitlin Clark does this a lot. Caitlin Clark's the young basketball WNBA star who's causing all the controversy. And I fear that the way the right wing is manipulating and using her entire story, and then stuff like this, gang, what I'm getting at is I'm afraid this is going to eventually become a right wing dog whistle.
Like
I'm worried.
Like the other hand gestures.
Yeah, that like making hand hearts is going to become problematic in the future. That's just put a pin in that, gang. If it happens, you heard it here first. But the other thing is I did prepare. Could y'all tell I was excited to have Ember and Steph here? I actually did some preparing for the stream today. So look at this, y'all. This is their site as it looks today. If we just pull it up, and he's right. So first off, they're again the American College of Pediatricians, right? Not to be confused with the American Academy of Pediatricians, right? And there is a lot of that in academia. So they get that, right? Because we do tend to have organizations in academia that have very similar names, but had a split 50 years ago
this is
over
done
some paper.
intentionally.
Yeah.
The founder of this organization split off from the American Academy and used a very similar name, College versus Academy, on
Yeah.
purpose to misdirect people because
Yes.
he was big mad about the Academy's position on allowing gay couples to adopt. The
Oh,
American College of
okay.
Pediatricians, they aren't
Okay.
just
Yeah.
anti-trans. They're anti-gay. They're
Okay.
anti-abortion.
There it
They want to send
is.
us right back to 1952.
There it is. Ember bringing us the goods. Bringing us the goods. All right, y'all. So that's their site. And you can see as you scroll. All right. So this is the landing, right? And then as you scroll down to sort of beneath the fold, you know, you get it's a typical kind of website design. But look how close it is to a few things. So here we have the CDC's website, right? So it's got almost that government type of like big medical body look to it. This is the CDC's. Here is the NIH's website, right? And then here is again the actual AAP site, so the organization they're most directly emulating. Okay, so you can look at the AAP site and then hop back to theirs. Okay, so it's definitely, they definitely have the right aesthetic, right? They definitely are capturing, right, like you know, it's just part of it, you know. Like if I were, okay, let's put it this way, I'm trying to keep a little bit of my prosecutorial hat on because I think these people are fucking criminals, right? And if I were to be making my case about them passing themselves off as a legitimate medical organization or something, a huge part of that would be the lengths they went to recreate the aesthetics, right? Like that's just, I hate to say it, but part of it is they faked their vibe, right? And that's a part of the problem too. Like I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. That's why they did it, is for misinformation purposes, which we saw after the statement that Hemmett's going to get to in a little bit. It was reported on Fox News. It was reported on all over the internet. Elon Musk picked it up. YouTubers, all the right-wing grift fuckers, all of these people, they reported the American College of Pediatrics as if it were the American Academy of Pediatrics. They didn't bother to note the distinction. They didn't bother to notice the huge difference in membership. American College of Pediatrics has something like 700 members, only 200 of which are physicians. Compare that to 67,000 physicians in the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Yeah, I think he's getting into that. So yeah, it's
no
so
contest
good.
here.
No contest here. But yeah, I'm glad.
As long as they never mention it, people think the one is the other. And when it's presented that way, they're using one misinformation to cover another misinformation and trick the people who don't Google things into thinking it's fact.
100%. And yeah, and I just wanted to give our audience just a chance to just see what we're talking about with the aesthetics. They're very deliberate
and
with
gender ideology. That's bad. And medical decisions should not be based on what someone wants, but on whatever the birth certificate says. Whatever. We recognize. Okay, so they said all this crap, but they also,
to be honest, they're even emulating their. Sorry, go ahead, Steph.
I said, thankfully, my birth certificate, I'd confuse the fuck out of them because my birth certificate says the right thing.
I was just gonna say, it's, you know, noticing it now that now that we just went through those statements, and now looking back at this, they even emulated the aesthetics and the flow of the statement, right? So this is a deep fake. This is what we mean deep. When we say deep fake, this is what we mean by deep. Like, yeah.
Held a press conference, which is kind of interesting. Before I show you the clip of this, do you remember when COVID was happening outside the Capitol? There was a small group of doctors. I don't remember timeline-wise when this was. I can't remember if this is like when vaccines were ready for COVID or when people were told to wear masks. But at some point, a handful of doctors stood outside of microphones outside the Capitol and basically said, you know what Fauci is telling you? Do not do anything he says. Yeah. We know what we're talking about because we are doctors. We're wearing the white coats. Don't do it. They were called like the frontline doctors. And now one of those people is like the Surgeon General in Florida because Ron DeSantis is like, how can I hurt more people? This is what this press conference was. You had all these a handful of doctors. They showed up and they basically said exactly what I told you about. Let's not help trans people. Oh yeah, I think commenter mentioned this. They were also.
So just some more speculating. Okay, because this is partially what brings me here, right? Is I of course love y'all to death. If anything trans is on the agenda and I can be here, I'm happy to be here. But this especially gets up my booty hole because of just the deep fake of the profession, right? And like the poisoning of the research. And it just reminds me of the moles we talked about in evolutionary biology, right? How these people go through and they get the degree, that way they have the degree and they teach out of college for a few years and then they've got that in their background. So they like have the legit background and then they say some nonsense and it just is problematic. It is problematic for all the reasons that we're going to get into. But yeah, that's why I'm here, y'all. And so, but what do you think that connection is with, say, that same thing we saw with Trump's team when it came to handling the virus? Like, like I know they're using the same playbook, but now I'm suspicious how much they might even be the same people.
Well, they are very much the same people in a lot of cases. A lot of the people that are behind the monies, but the same money is behind these people, and in some cases the same people are
behind
people.
the people. Yeah.
They're not behind the people, right? Actually, there.
People. Yeah.
So
sure.
it's kind of a weird thing,
Somebody should do that cross reference, right? And that's the way to figure
Actually,
it out.
well,
somebody did.
It has been done. Yeah. It has
Oh,
been done.
really?
Yeah, I think it was the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm seeing if I can find the link right now, but there's a whole interconnected web of all these mofos. TLDR, there's a bunch of different funding sources, and there's a bunch of different organizations, and they all interconnect. They all share the same people, and ultimately it goes back to the Heritage Foundation and their sponsors, the billionaires that are trying to keep the public divided so people don't realize. It really sounds like a conspiracy theory, but if you follow the people involved with each group, they're the same people on the same payroll.
Americans defending families is huge.
We should say this. So, it sounds like a conspiracy theory until you realize it's the business model.
It is
right.
It is. It's part of the drill. It's found its way into Project 2025. It's all in there, and politically at least, these things are aligned. Krista Peterson a couple of years ago did all. She and Katie Montgomery. Krista, by the way, is cis, and Katie is not. But a couple of years ago on Katie's channel, they broke it down.
Like the web of these connections. Yeah.
The web of the connections, and Krista did an amazing job.
So Steph, here's what I was thinking. You talk sometimes about the copy pasta in the legislation. We take the legislation and we insert your state here, and we'll have to change a couple of things, but it's the same thing. The other thing,
that's all comes out of Americans defending families.
So what this makes me think though too is that there's a copy pasta element to these organizations. There's they'll say all the experts disagree with us, but we'll create our organization of experts, we'll come out with our mission statement, right? And so they're doing copy pasta here too, and it just means that it's a lot deeper and more sophisticated than just copy and paste pieces of legislation.
1,000%. I did find
something up here.
Thing. Yeah, this is a Southern Poverty Law Center. They went and put together. You can click on any association in here, and it'll show you which ones are connected to them, which way they're sharing personnel, and so on and so forth. Here we see GenSpect, which is a recently classified hate group, and the Public and Adolescent Gender Dysphoria Working Group, which is the super group that's coordinating all this nonsense. And right down here, the American College of Pediatricians. And you know, they fund Do No Harm. They receive funding from the Kelsey Coalition. All this nonsense is interconnected. And on this page, they have other I can't remember where there's so much data in here.
Can you drop a link?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is wild.
I have to put it in the private chat because I don't have a wrench out in the generals.
Oh, okay. Let me. I'll go ahead and drop it. I don't know why you don't. You have a wrench on my channel, don't you?
I don't
Maybe
think
not the
so.
others. I thought you did.
On my channel.
I'll make sure. I'll give you one.
Yeah, we're
Okay, I'll put it directly.
I just always just assumed you had one.
You should check your chat more often.
As a cure for COVID, which it is not. Bad medical advice. You would not want to listen to these doctors, but for the conspiracy theorists out there and the people
I
who
usually
vote
watch the
Republican,
chat
it's
and
like,
restream, and it doesn't show me who the mods
these are
are.
doctors saying this thing, which okay, you get if you look the part and you sound like you know what you're talking about. There's a lot of people who will believe anything you say. I'm going to show you a clip of this press conference. And mind you, there were multiple people who spoke at this thing. I'm just going to show you one of them. Let me play this for you, and then I will talk. And I should also tell you, this woman spoke for like 4 minutes. You could tell where I edited this just for the sake of time so you could get a glimpse of her whole speech, but I'm not going to play the whole thing.
And we have serious concerns about the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. So we are
Ember, I added you as a mod, and Robin.
calling on these medical.
Go ahead, Seth. Did you want to say something? Yeah.
I had to go for just by way of explanation. I had to go for a wardrobe change because it's 90 degrees in here.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy hot here too. Yeah. Crazy hot.
Organizations of the United States, and immediately stop the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex.
It's worth noting that, as we saw in Ohio blatantly, but in other states a bit more subtly, the instant they do get transgender care banned for youth, they immediately come for adults too. It never stops with the kids.
My blood is boiling, and I'm literally like, these are people who have never felt the visceral response to hate. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just that sense of like not feeling like it's safe. You know, like that's what's so weird. Like another story from growing up. Like I remember just antagonizing people at basketball games, and it gets to a point where you pop off enough. There's a gang of dudes standing in the parking lot, like as you're going to your car after the game, and like they're trying to intimidate you, and they want you to say something after the game, so you give them excuse to do something, and they're mad. They're so mad. Why? Because you were being all types of disrespectful in the gym, and they couldn't do anything about it, and they were waiting outside. You understand? And so that's how most people feel. Like most people feel like, I can't just go around spewing genocidal rhetoric about others and expect nothing to happen, right? And these people literally just pull up to the microphone like, yeah, we think you should immediately stop caring for trans children, and yeah, don't let them do anything, and yeah, we're fine. All right, we ready for break for coffee? Like how, like that, the mishmash, the civility of the cruelty makes it so much worse to me. Because it just makes your blood boil. It just makes you think like, yo, those are fighting words. I know fighting words when I hear them. I know we're coming after you and your homies when I hear it. And you want to do something about it. And these people don't realize that, like, You live in a world full of people who want to do something about it. And that's why they sound so smug. I know I can't put that on y'all, but that's just what I'm hearing.
In our declaration, we affirm that sex is a dimorphic, innate trait defined in relation to an organism's biological role in reproduction,
science.
male and female.
Yeah,
Medical
it's
decision
lying about
making should be
medicine.
based upon
Lying.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
lying.
and how is it legal? How is it legal? First off, I can't go around and call something McRonald's, okay? And just say, no, my clown's wearing purple and green stripes. I'm not pretending to be McDonald's at all, right? And then to just do harm, like, you know, maybe put some rat poisoning in the burger, just who, you know, like, how is it legal? Like, there just has to be a point where, what is the government doing if it's not protecting us from well-financed fascists who are lying to us while pretending to be medical doctors? I'm sorry, if the government can't stop this, I'm done. Like, what fucking good are you?
Well,
What good are you?
In fairness, Jill Simmons is an actual working pediatrician.
That's even worse. That's probably the worst thing.
Yeah, she should lose her license for spreading
yes.
harmful misinformation, but she is an actual pediatrician.
See, I was going to say that, and I didn't know how much people thought this was a hot take, but I think all these people should lose their licenses, all of them. And I say that in the sense of threat of losing their license, because I don't think it actually would happen. They're always going to be given out, but this should be a thing you have to back all the way out of and away from, unless or otherwise you lose your license, because this is a violation of the Hippocratic Oath. It's not medicine. Like, I can't imagine a more unethical thing to do as a physician.
It's like you go in to see a doctor. You know, you've got spleen cancer or something, and the doctor says, yeah, I know, I've read all the research about chemo and biopsies and all of this, but instead of that, I think the right thing is leeches, because my religion says so.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Amber.
Like, how do you have a
let's
fucking
try
license?
cupping. Let's see how that works.
Yeah,
Know?
right. Yes. And that's and I think first of all, I think lawsuits, I think losing their licensing, all those commissions of professional stuff, I think probably criminal charges, and I also hope all the malpractice, all of it, just all of it, because that's what this is. And honestly, I hate to say this, y'all, but we live in a world where people like this don't stop doing these things until they can't. You have to stop them. You can't ask them nicely. You can't tell them, like, oh, they're upsetting people. Calling them names is a step in the right direction. That's certainly better than, sending them flowers. But ultimately, there has to be consequences. Serious ones.
That's actually kind of the hard part, because remember, these organizations have funding coming from the Heritage Foundation, from Ziklag, from all these gigantic billionaire-funded organizations. And if she did lose her license, then she'd just go the Jordan Peterson route and be like, I was canceled for telling the truth. It'd just make her a martyr to these people.
I mean, I think that's true, but I think we got to send them on that path.
Hurting children.
That's true. Yes,
but she won't be hurting children. She won't be able to practice medicine. I mean, that's a thing. It's like Jordan Peterson lost his license. He can't practice medicine anymore. He can't book. You can say I'm a trained psychologist, but when was the last time you actually talked to a patient? You can't do that anymore, Dr. P.
The other thing I think too is it kills the mold plan for a lot of people. It sort of raises the bar. So, like, there will always probably, unfortunately, be people like this, and be people who will take it to the extreme of they're committed to the grift no matter what. So you cancel them, then like you said, they go the podcaster route. If that becomes too much, they'll just try to go the Fox News route or the 4chan route. Like they're just committed, ride or die, right? But it does to me send the signal to most people that like, yo, this profession is for real and we don't tolerate that. And so unless you're some wacko who really wants to just become a right-wing, influencer, if you have any intention on actually practicing medicine,
I mean,
you ain't gonna be able to get away with this shit.
Ray Blanchard's still around. He's still, he's still doing his thing. Ken Zucker's still around. Ray Blanchard invented the concept of autogynephilia, and that's an absolutely ridiculous thing. It says, geez, most women enjoy when they have sexual fantasies. They have sexual fantasies about having sex as a woman. Wow, brilliant insight there, Ray.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. Trans women are like women in more respects than we thought.
That's absolutely insane. And Ken Zucker ran the Canadian mental health CAMH ran a gender clinic in Toronto, Canada, and he got his license yanked. Why? Because he was practicing conversion therapy.
Again, I'd say good on good
he's
for him.
not doing that anymore.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
Look,
yeah.
Don't let him hurt people.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's still
On an
around.
individual-
He ain't dead yet.
Right. Yeah. They're
he's running
find another way
a
to eat.
misinformation journal with Bailey.
Yes. Yes.
Which is where these people are probably published.
Probably.
Feels
Holy
biological
crap.
sex. It should respect biological reality and the dignity of the person by
Gross.
compassionately addressing the whole person. We are
Gross.
here to
All right, and
find
I just gotta say too, like, and I'm totally taking inspiration from what we read earlier, but I'm just gonna say biologists too are very concerned about the way our field is being used to harm people, at least those of us that are worth our paychecks. I know this is going to sound crazy to people, but part of the reason I'm so stubborn on things, y'all, is because I took an oath similar to a Hippocratic oath when I became an educator. You don't have to, nobody makes you, it's not a requirement, but I think if you're not seriously committed to the principles of one, not harming, and two, not misinforming your students, then you genuinely should not call yourself an educator. And I take those things very seriously. And these people that just keep weaponizing the word biological, respect the biology, the biological, and then they lie about the biology. It's something we can't tolerate as biologists the same way the psychologists and the psychiatrists can't tolerate it, the same way the pediatricians can't tolerate it. We have to recognize the moment that we're in now. We have to hear the way our field is being used in the public discourse and make a very clear stand about it. So I know they're still going to probably say biology 1,000 more times, but I just wanted to get that in there.
Oh yeah, it's a substitute word. It's basically a dog whistle.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
They don't want to say cis, they don't want to say assigned at birth, so they substitute biological as if Steph and I aren't biological.
Yes, honestly, it's a slur. That's what you have to realize. They might be saying your field, but it's actually a slur. They're saying they're trying to say these people are not natural. There's what's natural, and they're using biology as coded for natural. And then anything that's obviously not that is therefore unnatural. And there's just no such thing as a not natural human beings, because we haven't figured that out yet. I don't know how else to put it, but all people are naturals. So that's just, but it's off. But you have to remember just how awful that just that's terrible. We just have to think. We have to just remember that. Remember that that's what they're doing when they say that. They are completely dehumanizing a population of people. Completely dehumanizing them.
Claims made by these medical organizations in the US that those of us who are concerned are a minority and that their protocols are consensus. They are not consensus, and we are speaking in a loud, unified voice. Enough.
All 700 of you,
Loud,
all
yes.
200 are physicians.
Wow.
But look, here's another thing that's so interesting. You hear this even in the churches that have split over these issues, right? But these people make it their whole personality, and it hurts them. Sulami was talking about this earlier in Gather, was how it probably hurts them in every area of their life. And this is a similar thing here, where they've gone out and started some whole whack job organization, got themselves all a mess involved in public policy, and this will be what they're remembered for. Hopefully it's the downfall of their professional career, but it does show you how hatred takes over a person's life completely.
Yeah, for sure. I heard a quote earlier today. Well, I mean, it's only a quote when you like take the quote and make it, but whatever. It was something to the effect of bigotry rots you from the inside until all that's left is hate.
Yes. That's I like that.
Watching this are thinking to yourself, like, what the hell is she talking about? None of that is accurate. But here's the thing. They look the part. She had her doctor uniform. I'm not denying she's a doctor, but like, she's playing the part. She's looking the part. Notice you have no idea who's in the audience there because they don't need it, because they're just trying to put on a show for you. And the whole thing is, we are doctors. We're telling you that everything that feeds into your right-wing anti-trans conspiracy theories is true, and we're the smart ones because we're doctors. And if they do that, they can trick dumb people into thinking they have a point. And it worked, because
and that's what the fucking moles do, right? We're scientists, and we're here to tell you the evidence supports creationism. What? Huh? What? Who let the weirdos in again? Y'all let the weirdos in again. But yeah, this is what I mean. It's the same thing. And this is what I mean about the copy pasta. It's a deep script that they have of making these counterfeit institutions.
Spreading this stuff. Well, you had Elon Musk, who responded with, wow. Notice what he's retweeting there. The American College of Pediatricians just put out this fire statement.
And it's funny. We point and laugh. Let's put it this way. We point and laugh because we broke.
I don't know. I don't have $45 billion to blow on fucking social media.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot a person like me can really do to affect Elon. Let's keep it real. But so we point and laugh. But that's a powerful motherfucker. That's a motherfucker with a lot of institutional leverage. And again, he's made it his entire personality.
Did you see that Starlink is apparently wrecking the ozone layer? Awesome. Thanks, Elon.
Really? Fucking asshole. Okay, so another thing that's weird too is this is something you said, talk about what's new. I don't know how new it is, but it feels maybe like it's a peeling back time even further, because it feels like we're coming back to a place where people were out front with their bigotry. It felt like for a while, people, at least if you were some billionaire and you own big shit like Elon does, and you hated certain groups, maybe like people in your inner circle knew that because you popped off and said some dumb shit at a party once in a while, but you mostly kept that shit to yourself because it was like you ain't wanted the headache of the bad PR and the bad press and all this. And now these dudes are like, no, I actually bought the social media platform so I could be a bigot on social media. And you're just like, this is weird.
It's shifting the field. It's an attempt to shift the field back to where it was in when I was 4 years old in 1957. It's shifting the field back to the time when, well, let's see, we can try aversion therapy. Then, you know, if that doesn't work, well, if the kid is really insistent, persistent, and consistent, we'll go to the electroconvulsive shock, and that might take care of things. I mean, it's literally going, you know, trying to dial the clock right back so that the majority. Why did I delete Colassia's comments? I didn't mean to do that.
No. I just put it down. I had it up, and then I took it down.
I don't know why I seem to have deleted her comments by bouncing around on the couch somehow.
Oh, I don't know.
I didn't mean to do that, but you know, it's moving. It's moving the field back to that era when you had Harry Benjamin against the medical profession, and now you know it's the tables flipped when it started saying, hey, you know what? The way science works is guy comes up with this idea that maybe this isn't the best way. And suddenly the field starts realizing this, everything else has been a miserable failure. Why don't we let them transition? You know, and it's like, hey, it works. How about that? You know, we discovered something new. Well, you know, that's how science works. You know, this paradigm's not working. There's a paradigm shift. And the people that are left are trying to shift the paradigm back to that old paradigm and not let, you know, and basically reject everything that's happened over the course of the past 66 years.
Yeah, Elon sucks. Did you want to add something, Ember?
Oh, I was off on a completely different tangent.
That's fine.
They keep referring to this statement as the ACP called a news conference, but I noticed none of the footage has any news network logo in the corner. So who came to because haven't mentioned we don't see who's in the audience. So I'm trying to find which news organizations came. Well, nobody came because it wasn't actually a press conference, because these fuckers are completely incompetent. They can do the surface level fakes. They can copy the style, but not the substance of real organizations.
Yes.
And as I was tootling around looking at these things, I came across they are more incompetent than I could ever have possibly dreamed. In 2022, I think. 2023, May 2nd, 2023, they left a Google Drive public on their website, and journalists, including Wired.com, found 10,000 confidential files from the anti-trans doctor group. And it's got all kinds of stuff, where their members are, at least as of the date of when these files were found, where they went to school, what their positions are. It's got plans in there for releasing children's books that throughout the course of the book, coloring books and shit for little kids that indoctrinate them into the idea of purity culture.
Shit.
Like all kinds of shit. And it's just it's just out there. Yeah, there's case files on a 10-year-old child who became pregnant due to an illegal thing that we can't talk about on YouTube.
Yes.
And they're using this child's forced pregnancy as like a virtue thing. They're trying to market it up, and there's so much stuff. It's crazy.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And of course, none of this should really surprise us, because we know that this is all tied to a whole right-wing agenda, right? It's not like these people exist in a vacuum. It should come as no surprise that they're essentially Christo-fascists. Actually, we all know that that's who this is.
Yeah,
Terrible.
Calling out
all of it. Even
all
if they
of
don't
it.
admit it freely, all of it ultimately boils down to Project 2025. Even if that fails, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
To overthrow the government and replace it with a theocratic state. And again, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, except these incompetent motherfuckers left the receipts lying all over the place.
It reminds me of that scene from The Wire when, Stringer Bell is like, he's the boss. He's like talking his crew through the plan, and then somebody's sitting there writing down notes. He's like, oh, motherfucker, you sitting here taking notes on a goddamn criminal conspiracy. like obviously you can't write this shit up, but that's what they do. They leave it all out in the open. And honestly, I hate to say this, but it makes me really wary of allies, because I'm just so used to having to wonder. And you have to wonder, like, I wonder if so-and-so's a racist. I don't really know. And then you got to kind of like get into the grapevine and put together a case on your own. And it's hard. And you realize, like, we deal with a lot, because a lot of times it's just microaggressions, right? So it might be you experience microaggressions. And so you start talking to other people, like, does so-and-so seem a little weird to you, right? You see what I'm saying? And so then you have to come to some kind of consensus, like, oh, a bunch of us feel this way or whatever. And now these people are so out and out about it. I'm like wondering if people would still be able to even be allies if they were more subtle about it. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, would people still recognize racism if they had to believe me instead of the people actually saying crazy shit in public on record? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's sort of like the talks on institutional racism, how a lot of people are like, how can an institution be racist? It's just a building or whatever the hell. When you reach a certain level of subtlety and sophistication, when it's not blindingly obvious, then the people who wander around with blinders on all day don't see it. Even if you show it to them, even if you point them at it and say, right there, look at that, they still don't see it. So in a way, as the chat has noticed, it's kind of a good thing that these people suck at their jobs, because if they were even just a little bit more subtle, it would go right past most people. That's right.
Yeah. And that's what scares me, is that they'll mature in figuring that out, right? That's what scares me about, say, a lot of the politicians, because a lot of those politicians, they're not old guard, but they were around old guard enough to like know what that looks like and how to play that game. And then they're MAGA idiots. So some of them to me were like way more dated, like a Mike Johnson, for instance. Some of these people that actually know how to LARP as elected officials a little bit better are even more dangerous than the out and out loons.
Yeah. It's like you were saying about looking into people's backgrounds. Mike Johnson is a great example. Another thing comes to mind. In the city where I went to high school, there's a Baptist church. And I figured it was just a Baptist church, just a regular church, Baptist flavor, whatever. Until I started moving around in atheist circles, and a name rang a bell. And long story, very long story, much abridged, they were having an Answers in Genesis creationist speaker come to their church. And I'm like, these fuckers are creationists? I never knew, because they don't promote it.
They don't go there. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing. Mike Johnson doesn't talk about being a creationist on the House floor. He LARPs as a politician, even though his actual agenda is to ban evolutionism.
Yes, 100%.
All the major medical associations by name for pushing the gender transition craze on kids. And Elon spreads it. There's an organization called the Catholic News Agencies. This was their headline. Doctors urge U.S. medical groups to immediately stop trans treatments on children. But the one I really wanted to show you, guess who fell for this as well? Look at this. Look at this. The guy who publishes skeptic magazine who fell for this hook, line, and sinker. Here is the full statement from the American College of Pediatricians affirming the science. And Shermer would know because he's a very skeptical person who knows how to weed through BS.
Oh, he's took a hard turn to the right. He's been hanging out with Bogosian lately.
So you have all these morons.
You didn't know that Michael Shermer's a raging fucking transphobe?
I think maybe I don't know. I don't think I did.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
He's atheist for liberty. He's been hanging out there. He's been hanging out with Bogosian. He's so woohoo. Let's go right. That's where the money is.
What do people think about Peter? Like, what is the draw of Peter Bogosian? Peter Bogosian seems like the type of person it would take me literally 30 seconds to figure out that I want to throw off a bridge, and I'm not
really.
Like off a bridge,
it's like because like Shermer, he has a reputation as a skeptical thinker, and he does that street epistemology thing, sort of like Pine Nuts, although he's usually a little bit better at it. But he's also got this folksy way of talking that makes him be underestimated by his opponents. They're like, oh, this is just some dipshit from Alabama or something. I mean, he doesn't have a thick accent or whatever.
Smug prick. Oh my goodness. No, he brings out the most violent feelings in me. he's a person I don't think I could be in the same room as. Like,
Shermer was a disappointment. I gotta say,
I'm not saying that I couldn't resist the temptation to do violence to him. I could resist the temptation to do violence to him, but having to resist the temptation to do violence to him would make me hate everyone else in the room forever. So I'm just not going. I'm just not going.
Promoting.
I'm not going to that after party. I'm not going to be there.
And here's the thing you need to know about the American College of Pediatricians. This is not a legitimate organization representing the field of pediatrics. Do you know how there's a group called 1 Million Moms that's like, there's a commercial with gay people. It's going to hurt our children. And the thing is, they don't have 1 million members. It's like one mom who just pretends like she's speaking on behalf of all moms. That's what the American College of Pediatricians is. It's a small group of doctors. Let's assume they are legit doctors, but it's a small group of doctors who say they speak for everybody, even though they do not. It's like the Flat Earth Society compared to geologists, okay? This group, the American College of Pediatricians, if you want to become a member and you go to their website and you want to like say, I want to be a part of this, they require you to accept a certain set of ideologies. What are those ideologies? Well, you have to support abstinence-only sex education. You have to oppose same-sex marriage. You have to reject vaccine mandates. You have to link homosexuality with pedophilia, or at least that is something they have said on their website. They have supported gay conversion therapy. They claim trans identities are a mental illness. And the Southern Poverty Law Center has called them a hate group. And even if you're not a fan of the Southern Poverty Law Center, their website, when they say this is a hate group, it lists the receipts. It shows the things they have said that are not based in science. Last year, by the way, was it 2022? 2022, Wired Magazine got a copy of their internal documents.
Oh.
And they wrote an article saying, here's what we found from all these documents online. I think they got access to like their Google servers, like their Google Docs online, and they were able to sift through.
How is that just out there for these organizations?
Apparently, they linked it to their website somehow.
Oh my goodness! They don't even protect their Google Docs or something.
And I want to
they
show
trust
you something
Jesus to protect their data.
Because this was interesting. One spreadsheet appears to be an export of an internal database containing information on 1,200 past and current members. It contains intimate personal information about each member, including various contact details, where they were educated, how they heard of the group, and when membership dues were paid. I mean, if you're a member of this group, you probably don't want that leaking, but this is interesting. The record shows past and current members are mostly male, and on average 50.
Wow.
And as of spring 2022, The college counted
On
slightly more
average,
than
50.
700
Brilliant.
members. 700 members.
Wow.
Interesting thing about that 700 members. Is there a group that actually represents pediatricians? Yes, there is. It's called the American Association of Pediatrics. Here's their website. Like, this place is
Yeah, that's the
legit.
one
And
we're
guess how
looking
many
at.
members they have? They have 67,000 members. Not 700. No, they have 67,000 members. And they
Again.
actually do science
That's
and put out like
incredible.
statements.
Again, you want to get your information on these topics from Dr. Pine Nuts, or you want to get your information from actual physicians?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And this is where
I'll bet you Mr. Dr. Pine Nuts is a member of the American College of Pediatricians.
this is where consensus comes in, because you will have crazy people who are willing to jeopardize their entire professional credibility on some bullshit, and you have to understand where the weight of expertise lies and why.
Think of it this way. Think of it this way. Those 700 people, they're all the people that paid for blue checks on Twitter.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
They really are.
bought their legitimacy for $5 a month.
That's right.
You know, it's just come on now.
And they say all the stuff you would expect sensible doctors to say, such as do the responsible thing, get vaccinated, wear a mask. It's the healthier thing to do. And the thing, so what's going on with the ACP, the fake one? They decided about 2 decades ago, let's just imitate the American Academy of Pediatrics. We'll get a name that confuses people. We'll get a website that looks professional, and we'll just mimic them and then tell people, well, these are our recommendations, and then dumb people will fall for it. And we could tell them, you know what's a problem? Gay people. And
they'll
some
even
reporter
pay
will be
for
like,
it.
doctors
It's
say
even better.
gay people are bad. And
Yeah.
they have done this when it comes to abortion and obviously trans issues. And if anything, they were at the very least trying to piggyback on the credibility of the legitimate AAP.
I think this is just so much more. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna tell you what I really think. What I really think is,
Okay, you never go ahead. Let's
I
let everybody
know, I
listen.
know. I'm usually so
We're
filtered.
ready.
All right, no, because sometimes I say shit and I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna tell you. I think I'm saying, I'm gonna nah, tell them what you really think. So look, it's the religion. I think organizations like this and the shit like this, you and I could not get away with doing this. We could not get away with stealing another professional organization's branding, pretending to be them, especially not with what is your intent, y'all. Intent matters. Your intent is to do harm to a protected class of citizens. So to me, this is really the type of thing you only get away with when you are on the far right and you are 1 to 3 degrees of separation from hiding behind a religious shield. Because otherwise
with-
you go after these people.
Yeah, that's exactly it. People are like,
Well-
how is this even possible? Because this is clearly an intent to defraud motivated by financial gain. It's literal crimes. How
Right.
does this happen? But their benefactors are the same people who have half of Congress in their pockets.
Right.
Oh, I got to respond to Robin Webster. He knew he was going to trigger. If you're referring to Dr. Pine Nuts, I'm not triggered at all by that guy. I just like to laugh at him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
it's-
And Jay did a marvelous takedown of that stuff yesterday.
although
Go-
you know what,
go
it
watch
is
that video.
yeah. Go check that out. Check out yesterday's stream.
Mm-hmm.
To piggyback,
it was-
because let's say we're talking about vaccine mandates. Well, a reporter is going to say, what is the American Academy of Pediatrics, the legit group, what do they have to say about vaccines? And then dumb reporters will be like, you know what I need? I need the opposing viewpoint because both sides matter. And who are they going to go to for both sides? Well, here's another group of pediatricians. Let me ask them what they think.
Right.
which is the dumbest possible thing to do, because why would you go to a group of like automatic contrarians who don't care about science because they care about ideology? But that's the whole point. The point is to confuse people,
don't care about
even though
trans
there are
people.
not two scientifically valid positions on certain issues.
Yeah, now see, that's where there's no neutrality to, like, in the way people cover this. I mean, if you're a newspaper or something like that, that's gonna traffic in the both sidesism of this, then you're contributing to that harm as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know specifically the article he's talking about, too. It was published by Fox News originally. Of course it was. And it was like the day after this fake press conference. And they went to great lengths to both sides it. And the only indication that the American College of Pediatricians isn't the same as the real Pediatricians Association is when they're mentioning they list off the groups that the American College of Pediatricians singles out as promoting this harmful fact-based life-saving medicine.
Yeah.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is specifically listed along with WPATH and the American Psychological Association and all the major medical organizations. There's no mention that ACP exists to impersonate AAP. It's not mentioned.
See, and I'd argue that's unethical journalism. Because you can't be that stupid.
And because the fake ACP looks the part and has a logo and wears professional doctor jackets when they do things, the dumb people fall for it. And I want to give you one more example of why this sham group, they put out like a report last year trying to show everyone, here's how successful we are. Here's our year-end report. And I want to show you this one thing. Look at this. We protect children from the harms of transgender ideology. But look at this in the upper right here. Our presence in the news media and social media has expanded exponentially. This is how they're measuring success. It's by how many views they got on social media and how many social media followers they have.
They have
By the way, I have more
And
of
it's
those
so
followers.
it's so pathetic. It's so sad.
Steph, how many Twitter followers do you have?
Twitter
I'll bet
followers?
you it's more than this
I've
whole
got-
fucking organization.
No, I've got 2,700 Twitter followers.
So
Okay,
what's
More Twitter than they do. Anyway.
What's interesting about this too is that it's a weird thing for them to focus on because it really doesn't matter. Like their function is to wear the white coats and say they're the doctors and the doctors hate trans and all this stuff. And then the things with the platform and the reach are supposed to pick that up, right, and echo it and put it into the echo chamber. But yeah,
this is
it's just vanity.
This is the metric these guys are going for. They're not going for a metric of better outcomes in healthcare. They're not going for a metric of lives improved. They're going for a metric of the people whose hatred and bigotry they're able to reinforce through their own, spreading their own.
I'm also wondering how much they've been frustrated with their lack of mainstream media exposure, and maybe that's why they've gone to this instead of like as seen in all these major places. But who knows?
And I'm not an organization of anything, but like you would think, oh, what's the metric on how useful you are, on how good you are as an organization for pediatricians?
There you go.
And you would think they would measure like how many kids' lives have we saved? How many doctors, how many scientific journals have we been published in? That's how like legit groups might rate their success. These guys are like, look how many Facebook likes we got. Elon tweeted us or retweeted us, so we're going to count that as a win. Now give us money so we can lie to people. Like that's
it's
not
actually
how
funny
you
that he
measure
mentions that.
success at all.
The journal articles. They actually have a policy. This was in the leaked documents too. They have a policy that was voted unanimously by their board of directors, including Dr. Jill, who's been doing the talking here, that whenever one of their members has a paper rejected by a journal, they'll just publish it on their website.
Right.
All the papers on their website are
Really?
rejected papers.
Wow.
Right.
That's
So, you know,
deep.
their peer review consists of their echo chamber.
It's Answers Journal with less oversight, if you can believe it.
Oh my goodness.
Like, all of that's to say no one should be paying any attention to what a conservative hate group that only cares about ideology, not
Pretty
science,
much.
not medicine, says about transgender people. In case you are wondering, notice I have not talked about the substance of anything they said, but I did want to give you some perspective on that too, because like, I know there are some atheists and whatnot who are like, well, maybe they kind of have a point. We should not do anything gender affirming for children. Scientific American, which I know is not a journal, but they do write about science, they actually analyzed this and wrote up a thing about this a couple of years ago. And I thought this was a pretty useful summary of what the science actually says about this stuff. And I want to read this because this is important. The truth is that data from more than a dozen studies of more than 30,000 trans and gender diverse young people consistently show that access to gender affirming care is associated with better mental health outcomes, and that the lack of access to such care is associated with higher rates of
There you
suicidality,
go.
depression, and self-harming behavior. And look at this too. Major medical organizations, including the legit American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the Endocrine Society, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Psychiatric Association have
And
published
gang, like this video, because unlike we dove into those statements for you earlier on this here stream. So I mean, that's got to be worth the sub, y'all. But no, really,
framing is really, really important.
yeah, no, really,
you gotta
really
you gotta show
appreciate-
what's legit before you start debunking what's crap, especially with something this important. And also, you may have noticed Jace channel is really close to that 1K mark.
really close. We
And
getting
some
there.
cool things happen at the 1K mark. You get an extra set of tools. You get to do the redirect thing, for one example, which is my favorite
I
tool
want
as a
the
creator.
redirect.
There's a bunch of buttons that show up, and if Jay does good work, if you want to give him more tools to do that good work,
That's right.
then share this shit and get your friends to subscribe.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ember.
policy statements and guidelines on how to provide.
Don't bother subscribing to my
age-appropriate
channel.
gender
It
No,
sucks.
definitely subscribe to Steph's channel. The link's in the description. It's sailing season.
affirming care. All of those medical societies find such care to be evidence-based and medically necessary. Oh, but like 10 doctors wearing lab coats went and said, we're doing a press conference, and they said, all of those people are wrong. To believe that is to say, well, I heard a climate denier was a scientist, so maybe climate change is a
Exactly.
hoax. It's like, who cares what one idiot says? Why don't you listen to what like 99% of the people who study this stuff all the time say? Because maybe they have a better handle on this stuff. Meanwhile, Michael Shermer, of all people, is spreading this BS like it's legit because he also only cares about ideology, not science. By the way, after I posted about this,
And it's so
myself,
wild.
I'm not
Like
taking-
it's not just Shermer, Bogosian, Pine Nuts, all of these fuckers. Like they think they're we need to focus on the right-wing people because spreading atheism is important there too. But the ideology, the propaganda they're putting out there, it all feeds into the Christo-fascist movement. Like you dumb
Yeah.
fuckers, you're
Yeah.
helping the fucking religious fascists. You're helping the Christian nationalists.
Yeah, I'm one of the people
This
who
is their
sees
playbook.
I'm one of the people who sees them as interrelated so much as to the extent that they're not interrelated, I no longer care. Like when we stop dealing with the issues at hand and the harm that religion causes, then who gives a fuck? You're just talking about you don't like the lore or you don't think the lore is true. So to me, like that's why there is that association where people get free from religion, and then that helps liberate them on other issues. So if it were me, no right wingers would be anywhere near our organizations. They just wouldn't be. It wouldn't be a. I'm not saying you can't be an atheist. I'm just saying we're about something that's pretty big and much more significant and important right now, and that shit isn't helping.
In a way, it kind of makes the evangelicals' point. If you don't believe in morals, in ethics, or a meaning to life that's bigger than yourself, then you will sell yourself out to the first person to come at you with a paycheck. And that's exactly what we see from Shermer and Sheedy and Pine Nuts and all these fuckers. They're all chasing dollar signs because what good is your lack of belief and your rational thinking if you don't use it? What difference is that you call yourself an atheist, but if you don't have any humanist values, then what good is it?
Yeah.
Right. They don't have God's skirts to hide behind anymore. That's the only difference. They're hanging on. They're hanging on to some of the very core principles of their previous religious indoctrination, but they just dropped the God thing.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like there are problems.
It's easier to escape from those principles when you drop the God thing, but it ain't necessarily so.
Yeah, and it's a problem for us too because I think they're a problem. Like they want to come in and then say, well, let's not pay attention to trans issues. Let's not talk about race. Let's not fight for economic injustice. One, because they have all these other conservative values, and then they want to waste our time. I can't tell you how many atheists I hear complain about cancel culture and wokeness, and I'm just like, I'm done. Like if that's what you think is a fucking problem in the world, then we don't have very much to talk about.
Credit for this, but like shortly after, he issued another tweet. I don't have it in front of me, where he's like, all right, I heard all you people. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it appears this is some right-wing group.
Pretty much.
However, everything they said was still correct. It's like, yeah, you're not doing skepticism. I don't know why anyone.
I don't know. Does Shermer not identify as a humanist? That's an even bigger indictment.
I don't know, but
it wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think he can even legitimately claim to be a skeptic anymore because he uncritically buys anything that agrees with his ideology, and that's not a skeptic.
That's so weird. Yeah, Pine Box definitely isn't
either. Like listening to this fake medical group, that's like going to a Catholic priest to ask for sex advice. Why would you do that? They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. Why are you trying to get advice?
Depends on what kind of sex advice.
I mean, if you're Michael Bailey, a Catholic priest is exactly the guy you want to talk to.
Oh man, depends on the priest. That's a good one.
People who are extremely ignorant about the subject. By the way, the dude that I want to show you that Elon.
I used to want to be a priest. When I was a kid, it was the celibacy thing I couldn't do. So again, I think that's part of it. That you have to be a certain type of person to be called to celibacy or called to pretend you're celibate or any of that. Like that's a tough one for most of us. For most of us, that's like, I love you, Jesus, but can't do it. Can't do it.
One more time. This tweet that he was sharing by Robbie Starbuck, who said, "Oh my God, look at this video that happened." Who is Robbie Starbuck? He is a guy. He's an anti-trans activist who just came out with a movie about anti-trans stuff not that long ago. He's like promoting an anti-trans movie, so of course he's promoting the BS people promoting anti-trans propaganda. And in that movie that he made, he literally lied to participants to secure their involvement and then edited their statements in deceptive ways. And the people he spoke to have already spoken out against him. So like even the guy they're all quote tweeting here is not a fair assessor of what's going on. You would think that would raise some red flags. I'm just saying, with the founder of Skeptic Magazine. But apparently I am wrong. All right, I'll pause there. What do we got? What do we got here? What questions? Trans people are people. We all have the right to medical treatment. Yeah, and the thing, obviously, you are right, Keith. The thing that boggles my mind is like, it's not like a child can walk into a doctor's office and say, like, I feel like I'm the opposite gender or something like that. So let's change my entire body. I want hormones now. I want you to perform surgery on me. That's not how it works. The gender affirming care we're talking about is give the child space to explore this stuff in ways that will help them understand it. It's not something that's going to happen like that. Like, and also, I trust what the medical experts say, not people who just wear lab coats and don't follow the science. So maybe the people who actually work with kids and study this and work with the medical associations that do all this stuff, maybe they know more about the subject than like random guy on Twitter who just wants to feed the conspiracy theories and fuel rage. I'm surprised by how many atheists fall for this stuff. It's disappointing, but like all those right-wing
There you
atheists,
go.
this is what they do as well.
There you go. But let me give you a couple extra cliches, y'all. No justice, no peace. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to understand that this is taking something from all of us. This is robbing us of our humanity. It's robbing us of our identity as people who live in a humane society that believe that all people are deserving of equal rights. How can we say that and deny people medical care? And at some point, we have to look the TERFs in the face and say, you are inhumane, you are cruel, and what you are doing is trying to deny people their rights. And I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what doctor you hold up. I don't care what study you think you read. There's nothing that justifies the cruel intention behind where these people are coming from. And I just want to say that, like, it's important that we have these conversations with trans people because it's about trans issues. Just like when you have conversations about race, it's important to involve people of color. And when you have conversations about sexism, you involve women. But look, you shouldn't need that for everybody to understand when the principle of everybody has equal rights is violated. The test is simple. Is said individual a person? If the answer is yes, then they have all the rights. And if that's not the case, y'all, then we don't have equality. We don't have freedom. We don't, none of this shit is real. And that part has to bother people. And it shouldn't matter who you are or how you identify. You should be able to look at another human person and recognize that they should have the same rights you do. Which is very frustrating.
It is.
I know it gets so specialized sometimes, but it's very frustrating. It's this is basic human dignity we're talking about, and we shouldn't let the transphobes suck up all the oxygen in the room, such to the point that we forget that that's what we're talking about, because it's 2024. And it sounds fucking ridiculous for it to be 2024, like a Jetsons year. We have self-driving cars, but we're still debating whether or not certain people should have medical care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just wild.
Yeah, and the irony is the guy who's making the money off the self-driving cars is campaigning to make sure some people don't have medical care. It's really great.
Right. Absolutely. And again, and I say this too, like, part of the reason I think they're so concerned about cancel culture is because they know they should be canceled. There's something about extracting the type of resources from society that make you a billionaire, and then you turning around and being cruel, like just cruel to, right? There's something about that that doesn't add up. And in a just society, that wouldn't be permitted. That wouldn't be tolerable. First off, it's questionable whether just society would even permit billionaires. But setting that issue aside, you would certainly not let individuals who performed cruelty on a daily basis in public to become the most wealthy and powerful amongst us. And they know that, right? And so they know that's why they rail against cancel culture, because they know they're sitting on some bullshit. They know they're bigots, and they know the response, they know the proper response is to disenfranchise them.
Dr. Jill. Yep, that's the lady in the lab coat. She's the executive director, by the way, of that fake group. This is an excellent point. Dr. Jill has that fundy voice. The one that says, you should listen to me, but I'm condescending toward you. It's the Katie Britt voice. Yes. Thank you for that.
Yes, that Katie Britt kitchen
Listening
voice.
to this as an intersex person is wild. I'm sorry, Moss Eater. I was told by Lady in Lab Coat that you don't exist. Sorry. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, living proof that, like, maybe gender spectrum, maybe it's a little more complicated than some people might think. It's like, sorry, I'm just going to pretend you're not there. There's just two, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And the doctor decides it when you're half a second old, and that's the end of the story. It doesn't get more complicated. I'm a scientist. I love nuance.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's the exception that proves the rule. No. It's the exception that totally demolishes the fucking rule. Give me a break.
Hang on a sec. I whiffed that. I don't know what I just did.
Oh, you broke it.
Did something.
I broke it.
Scientist. I love.
Okay, here we go. Go back.
Nuance. These are. It always makes me laugh when, like, science. I'm thinking of, like, Jerry Coyne, all those right-wing, conservative, atheists and scientists. When all of them say similar things,
Bree.
It's like, these are people who, if you
Hey,
did like
Bree.
a 2x2
Sorry about your tummy.
like you learned in your high school biology class, if you get to college or you study biology later on, one of the things you learn is, well, that's overly simplified. That is so not how our genes interact and work. It's way more complicated than that. And yet when you ask them about gender, it's like, nope, it's binary. We're done with this now. It's like, really? We're done studying this thing? Because I don't know, you would think they would be more amenable to studying nuance, but no. Cherry-pick doctors with an agenda. That's what their name should be. That's what the organization's name should be.
As I often say, when you pretend you already have the answers, you stop looking for answers. In fact, you become resistant to real answers because they tend to contradict the thing that you made up to pretend you had the answer in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's people shut down when people shut down their ability to take in new information and adapt and change. That's when things get weird.
Yeah, and there's so much of this that I like to pin on people not willing to admit they're wrong and change course, but there's certainly something much deeper here. And it's a weird sort of ugliness. I really don't get it. But there's something like when you realize somebody's a genuinely racist, it's very difficult to comprehend because you're like, I don't understand. It's like my skin's a different color than yours. It like doesn't make sense to have this much invested in it. And this is definitely just one of those things to me. I don't understand people who, even in their own lives, are willing to sacrifice their association with friends and families and fly in the face of all the scientific evidence. I mean, there's something deeply broken about a person this hateful.
I don't.
Yeah, especially when it comes to medical issues, outcomes are really the sine qua non, right? That's what is this successful or is this not? And conversion therapy is not successful. It leads to broken, damaged lives.
Mm.
And it's really kind of shitty that this is what a lot of these folks are advocating for, because you're going to break a person so that you'll feel better not having to guess about what they've got in their trousers. Seems weird.
Well, it
It's
goes
really
to
weird.
that the way they're always projecting about delusions. You think you're something other than you are. No, we tried being something other than what we are. It didn't
Wow.
work. That's why we transitioned. But they have that presupposition that they're right, and therefore you have to be beaten into submission with their presupposition, because otherwise they have to confront the fact that they've been operating under a delusion themselves. They have a break with reality themselves, and they can't
Absolutely.
handle that. So you must be wrong, and you will be punished for daring to question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's being trans is a different way to be human. That's for sure. It's a phenomenon, and not a lot of people ever have to confront it, and not a lot of people even have to think about it, which is why a lot of these folks don't even question it. It's like the young lady who was questioning Frank Turek about having breast reduction. He absolutely, adamantly denies it had nothing to do with gender affirmation for himself. He literally stands there and said, yes, I had the surgery. It made me feel better about myself. Well, you had a potentially, and he had gynecomastia. He had surgery when he was in the Navy to remove it. That's obviously gender affirming surgery.
Joe Rogan,
but it's okay for him.
Joe
but
Rogan
not,
is on
not for anyone else.
HRT and human growth hormone, and
Sure.
again, like,
Oh yeah,
a lot of people will make that choice, and I'm totally happy with it. But
yeah, I don't
the
mind.
don't
It's
oppose
why
other
you're coming
people.
after other
transphobes
people.
Have all had J.K. Rowling had facial feminization.
Wow, really?
I've got a picture around somewhere. I'm not going to dig it out right now, but
wow,
it's easy enough to Google. There's a bunch of these fuckers. It's gender affirming care for me, but fuck
Not
all
for
of
me.
y'all.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah, it's really crazy. Unbelievably cruel. All right, let's let them. Yeah, this is good. I'm so glad y'all are here. This has been fun. Tragic.
I
but
really
glad
don't
y'all are here.
understand why people put so much effort into hating things they know little to nothing about. I don't know either, but it fuels the entire right wing everything.
Funny.
It's grievance. Some people like to be mad. Some people like to be contrarian. It doesn't matter
It's
how much you
fucking
know about it. They just
performative.
know, oh, liberals say this.
It is performative, and a lot of them think that this is just how they're supposed to be.
Yeah, whether
Yeah.
it's sucking some rich dude or powerful politician's dick to get ahead or get clout or get special favors, or if it's just the basic propaganda of, oh my God, they're doing this to our children, send me money so I can protect your children from the scary people of whatever flavor. You know, it's
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think they're also being like edgy and contrarian, and that's a whole bucket of silliness too.
We got to be on the other side of it. Like, they're just reflexively against anything that is deemed woke, and it doesn't matter how correct
Right.
that side may be. They're just like, well, if liberals like it, I must hate it. and I'm going to make everyone's life miserable, because I think this is one of the reasons. I don't know if it's a fair comparison to say this anti-trans group is like the Flat Earth Society, but like, why do people genuinely believe the Earth is flat? Some of it's just plain old ignorance, but I think for some people, if you're in that subculture, you feel like you are right about something everyone else doesn't get. And for once in your life, you think you're the smart one. And like, you probably don't get that feeling anywhere else in your life. And I think that's the case for this stuff. If you talk about who's most anti-trans, it's these right-wing assholes who are just never the smart people. They're never the ones everyone looks to and say, that's the intelligent guy. No one said that about like Ben Shapiro. Like, you know what I like about him? Intelligent. No, they just make fun of him.
Only to each other, right? Like, that's the thing. Like,
exactly. Like, as many people have noted over the years, Ben Shapiro is a stupid person's idea of a smart person.
Same with like a Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, word salad. And which brings up, a certain flat earther we all know, but that's a whole other topic. Hammett does have a point with that whole feeling of special knowledge. But in a way, flat earth actually is really related, because both flat earth and transphobia ultimately stem from a literal belief in the Bible.
We were talking about this to mommies.
Every flat earther I've been able to get, what is at the bottom of your beliefs? Why did you start trying to prove flat earth? When I can drill down far enough, when I have a long enough conversation, it inevitably boils down to a literal understanding of the Bible. And it's the same bullshit with transphobes. If you cook them far enough at the very bottom, when all the bullshit has been distilled out, and all that's left is the slimy grit at the very bottom of the distillery, it's, well, Genesis 1 said that they were created male and female.
Yes. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I do think that passage is important to the transphobic ideation, especially amongst Christians. And I don't know why it gets underestimated. Like, I don't hear people talk about that particular passage enough. And then I hear the weird counter apologetics, like that Christianity or the religion isn't homophobic or whatever. And sometimes people will point to like the number of passages as if to say there aren't enough of them to cross some imaginary threshold of bigotry. Like, you don't need to call me the N-word too many times before I know what's up. But yeah, I do think as much as it's just that little thing right there, that's part of the creation myth, I think that's a huge part of people's resistance to trans people. And it's a creation myth, and it's not valid.
That's exactly it. That's why I've engaged with so many people who are like transphobe-ish, but not fully committed to the ideology. And as you talk to them, you're like, I see where your fundamental misunderstanding is. You have this base level core presupposition that there is only male and female, because they just can't wrap their minds around the idea that a person can be born male and not be a man. Like, yes, trans women are not biologically identical to cis women, but they're not biologically identical to cis men either. Exactly. And the same thing with trans men and non-binary people and 100%. Intersex people. And like, there's so 100%. Much. The reason they can't wrap their mind around it is because they have, at that, 4 years old, first time in a church level of understanding, there are only two options. That's the unbreakable presupposition, and it's from fucking Genesis.
100%.
Because he's a moron. But if you're in that bubble and you never get called the smart one, it's like, you know what? When it comes to this particular grievance, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, and I'm willing to look past what the left is telling you. Like, they feel like they're smart. I think that's a big part of it.
Another part of that is that they're not used to like investing in the things sort of like scholastically.
No critical thinking skills.
Yeah, and so when you put any time into like reading something a doctor says, or reading a couple articles, or reading some papers or whatever, or reading a book, they feel like they've done so much on that topic that they must have the expertise. So it might just be one book, or might just be one dumb article written by a bunch of transphobes. But boy, now that they've read that, it's like an investment, right? And they've made another big investment that confirms their beliefs. And so you find that a lot with people who sort of are like very shallowly educated in a topic, but very highly invested in that shallow education.
I know what I know. I can't be wrong because I'm a smart person.
Exactly.
I think it's
I think this is a fair assessment.
go ahead,
It's
Seth.
also just I think it's also a piece of this is it's about gender and sex, and the being trans, being intersex, being being in that shadow netherworld is something that is so far out of most people's experience that they can't wrap their minds around. A lot of people just can't wrap their minds around that, so they deny that it exists, and they generally tend to want to reinforce that denial on the people that are, because there must be something wrong, there's something defective, there's something weird about this. I mean, from my perspective as a very binary identified trans woman who knew that at an early age, expressed it at an early age, it's insistent, consistent, persistent until it was kind of whipped out of me through social opprobrium and threats. I found it very, very difficult to understand the notion of a non-binary gender identification for the longest time. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. And there are trans folk who are the slang is trans medicalists. You got to have, you're not really trans unless you get the surgery, and you're not really blah 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 blah. And it's like, no, that if you solidify yourself in one of those groups, and it's like, no, non-binary people can't possibly exist. You are either the one or the other. There are trans people that sort of still to this day have that have a difficulty with reconciling that in their own heads. But that's a function of, again, it's not me. I don't understand it. Therefore, it can't exist. It's like the bug bladder beast of Troll, which is so mind-bogglingly stupid that it thinks if you can't see it, it can't see you, or vice versa. However that works. It's just people get stuck in and often afraid of what they can't understand.
I definitely think I was raised with a binary mindset, but I don't think it was super hard for me to like accept, because I've always seen myself as like a weird boy. Like there's always been things I wanted to do or been involved in that other boys didn't do or weren't about. And it never made me feel like I wasn't, but it made me feel like, oh, people are different, and like that's cool. Like just because you're a guy doesn't mean you have to like always do everything that's stereotypically associated with what a guy wants to do or what a guy likes, right? Or if there was girls you'd be around that were like tomboys, and I'd be like, yeah, that's it's fine. Like, who cares if people think that shit's feminine or not? Like, you are who you are. So I think there's that experience that we like, that you like call to, that you go, oh yeah, there has always been like a lot of difference there. But I definitely still think that this is something where, because a huge part of the fight right now is about trans people, and a huge part of that fight is about trans women or women, trans men or men.
Yeah.
It might reinforce the binary a bit in a way that I feel like binary people are just not getting enough love in the whole picture.
And the issue is nuanced enough that in some circumstances, there is a binary, a person who has not medically transitioned will have an advantage. A male assigned at birth person who does not medically transition will have an advantage in certain sports. That is the case, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, because
I think with a lot of,
because you're not
with all
you're
else
not,
being equal, right? Because I always like, I honestly think you put me in a tennis match against middle school girl on the tennis team, and I lose every time because I can't play tennis.
Probably.
Right. And right, there's a lot of running, there's a lot of technique, and I just can't play tennis. And a trained tennis player, even at a scholastic level, because a lot of these guys think I'm a guy, and so you put me in a basketball one-on-one against a WNBA player, and I'll beat her. And I'm like, you're insane, like clinically insane. Like, yeah.
But you see, at the elite level of competition, in some competitions, not all, some activities, you're going to find the vast preponderance of non-medically transitioned trans women do have a physiological advantage.
Okay, but
it's demonstrable because of certain aspects of biology. This is where the whole biology argument comes in, right?
But that's at the elite level.
There are in fact differences on a biological system that's running with testosterone as primary sex hormone and estrogen as primary sex hormone. The biggest one is VO2. The biggest one is the amount of oxygen your bloodstream can carry. It is a biological fact.
Right. That's why Rogan's on it, right?
Biological fact. It is a biological fact that a typically male level of testosterone, a typical male has a higher level of hematocrit in their blood, more red blood cells than a typical female. And a typical, if your sex hormone levels are typically female, you have a typically female level of hematocrit. So your VO2 levels are typically within that female range, and that's an advantage. That's a biological advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, that's why the Rogans of the world and people like that are taking it, right? That's why they're on the. That's why they're taking the testosterone, because they.
That's why steroids
are illegal. Yeah. So, a couple things I think are interesting is, one, these things apply throughout everyday life, and I think that's often overlooked. So, for instance, you can go into a lab and you can say,
and Colossi makes a very good point. Sports are not fair. Fairness is not
100%. Yeah.
Where you where you draw the lines of fairness, and that's where it gets nuanced.
Yeah.
That's where it gets
And
nuanced.
so like when you have these things that are so you have a let's say you have a sport where grip strength is part of it.
Right.
You can go in the test and you can measure the difference in grip strength, and again, that applies to everyday life. It applies to
Right.
opening jars or whatever else grip strength might help you with. But that doesn't mean that grip strength is the entire sport, right? And there tends to be a very reductive view of
Correct.
these things that gets annoying. The other thing is we never talk about the things that are female advantage. When you actually teach these differences in the system, when you talk about cognitive differences, we talk about physical differences, the thing you tend to do is you teach both. You say, hey, there are these tasks we give people, and men tend to perform better than women on them. But there are these other tasks we give people, and actually women tend to perform better than men on them. And believe it or not, there are these physical tasks that are the same way, and we never talk about that other side of it.
Study just came out in January. Peer-reviewed study just came out. It was issued, I believe, in January of this year. It was commissioned by the International Olympic Committee. The people that did the study, the panel was led by Blair Hamilton, I believe it is. And it was commissioned by the IOC, and they did a study on VO2, on grip strength, on several measures of strength. And they did the right thing. They compared cis women to medically transitioned trans women, and found that medically trans women had very similar physical characteristics in terms of strength, in terms of what they measured, to cisgender women. And transgender men had very similar characteristics to cisgender men, with a slight advantage in abdominal muscle strength, which is rather interesting. But but in the aggregate, that's what sporting organizations have been trying to figure out over the course of the past 30 years. And it's not like they only started yesterday to do these studies, which is why it comes as a bit of a shock that, which is why it's mostly a political decision that FINA and that World Athletics and that World Rugby and that all of these organizations are coming up with these blanket bans. The reason is politics.
Yeah, and I will say this on the sports thing, which is, again, we got to take it back to a basic human rights issue, but this is one of the opportunities we have to see trans children thrive. It's just, you got to recognize who's vulnerable, who's going through a lot at the time. And part of the way you deal with that is giving them every outlet possible to just be themselves and have fun and be a kid. And, that to me is even a number one priority, even over concerns of advantage and stuff like that. Because when you know what it's like to be going through a lot in life, the only response to somebody who's going through a lot is let the kid play. All the other conversations are secondary. But yeah, we got to get up out of here because
Principle 4 of the Olympic Charter. Principle 4 of the Atlantic Charter is sport is a human right.
Absolutely.
That's very short.
Absolutely.
It does it.
So I'm gonna pull a Maya. Tell us who you are, where you are, what you got coming up this week. Ember, we'll have you go first.
All right. I'm Ember Belrad, and you can find me here on YouTube at Better Than Ember, and on Thursdays on the Transpositions. My links are all on betterthanreligion.com for easy use and so forth. And I make content at the intersection of LGBT issues and counter-apologetics, which shockingly often is the same person in a single video.
Same people, yeah.
It's wild.
It's a lot. And there are links to Ember's channel and the Transpositions in the description as well.
Hell yeah.
Steph, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Helms. I often screen and mod for the line. Sometimes have been a host on the Transatlantic Calling Show from time to time. I have my own little channel, Steppy Cath, at on the YouTubes. And tomorrow I will be sailing on that boat. So far, I haven't lost a race this year. Touch wood.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck. Good luck tomorrow.
I don't know. We'll see if we can keep the streak running. But out of 7 races, we've won 5 with me aboard, and when I wasn't aboard, they didn't win. Pisses me
Yeah.
off. But anyway, so that's tomorrow. One of these days, I'll try to figure out a way of actually taping a sailboat race, and I can bore you all to tears. Thursday, I'll be with Ember and Bree and Carly Chardonnay Webb on the Transpositions, talking about the news. Thank you, Colasia, I can never remember how to say that. But thank you so much for Rochelle. Yeah, thanks, Rochelle, for dropping a link to a very important story that I think we'll cover. It has to do with. Again, I obviously talk about the intersection between the trans issues and sports, and sometimes I wax philosophical. But yeah, I'll be on the transpositions, and I think there's something else coming up that I'm doing later in the week, but I can't remember what it is.
Well, you'll know if you go to the link down in the description and make sure you turn on notifications on Steph's channel and the transpositions as well. Ember, I know you really wanted to talk about these fake doctors as well, so I'll let you maybe give any closing thoughts or anything you want to put on people's minds as we head out.
Yeah, we've covered most of the bases over the course of this. The quick takeaway recap kind of thing is they're impersonating the real medical organization, and even though they're incompetent, they're doing a good enough job that the dumb journalists, that the people with no critical thinking skills, the people who do have critical thinking skills but don't use them on their own ideology, Michael Shermer, they never check. They never find out. Even if they're aware of this trick, because the right uses it over and over and over, of just impersonating something with a slightly different changed name, like, you know, McDougal's instead of McDonald's. Even knowing that they do this, it doesn't seem to dawn on people when there's ideological agreement, that confirmation bias, that echo chamber, that maybe that's not the most reliable source. And so we all have to be cognizant of the fact that we're vulnerable to being tricked too. But also the people we're arguing with on these fundamental issues of human fucking rights, they don't know what they're talking about because they're getting misinformation that's handed to them deliberately as misinformation. They've been lied to, and they don't know it and don't care.
Fantastic. Y'all, that's it. We're going to get up out of here on that. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. I really, really do appreciate it. Please like the video. Leave us a comment if you're watching later. Subscribe to the channels. There are links in the description. Thank y'all so much for doing this. Happy Pride Month, everybody. And if you want, come hang out and gather. There's a link in the description for that as well. We'll see you next